Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, we are going to explore this idea of practice. More specifically, which habits you practice each day and how that influences the results of what you're getting or not getting when it comes to your health, wellness, and self-care goals. Practicing positive behaviors will likely lead to positive results and you getting more of the change that you desire. Where practicing negative behaviors will probably not yield results that you want or may give you little results. So this week we're going to dive into that. So listen in. Each week, I go through my planner and I plan out what my week is going to look like and some of the goals that I want to achieve, some of the skills that I want to practice. And sometimes, some weeks, I'm very successful at knocking off those goals. I get them done. And then other weeks, I don't get very much done. And maybe you feel like that too. When I go back and I look through my planner on the weeks that I didn't get very much done, and I look back at the behaviors that I did, I realize that either I didn't practice the behaviors that I wanted to as much as I probably thought I had, or maybe even both, I practiced some of the behaviors that I don't normally do more than I wanted to. And so today we're going to talk about this idea of practicing. Typically, if we are practicing good behavior, we will yield results that are good. When I talk about practicing, I think a lot of times on here we talk about this idea of being consistent and how consistency is much more important than perfection. But I had heard someone talk about this idea of practicing, and I feel like it really hit me in a way that was different from consistency. And so I'm hoping that it hits a different way for you too. This idea of going back and looking at the behaviors that you practice every day and then looking at the results that you are or are not getting, I think is a really good way to help keep us accountable. I know sometimes when I look back at my week in my head, I think, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this. And I think I'm doing all of these things to get me to my goal. And yet I haven't achieved my goal. And when I'm really honest with myself and I really look back at what I did, I probably didn't do as much as I think that I did. And so that's why it's important to really talk about practicing what you do most days so that we can really figure out if something is getting in the way of allowing you to achieve the goal that you desire. So typically practicing the good behaviors, when I talk about good in quotes, I just mean results that are going to get you closer to what you're trying to achieve. So they tend to be more favorable in terms of your behavior. It's going to be and yield a more positive impact on what you are trying to achieve. It's going to lead to some kind of personal growth. Practicing these behaviors will lead to some kind of self-improvement, maybe a fulfillment of the goals or the actions that you're trying to achieve. And then typically practicing them more and more often, so also having that consistency, will yield long-term results towards what you're trying to achieve. I think practice is a way that we can really start to see what are the behaviors that you're doing every single day? How are you spending your time? Things that people mention to me and that I work on in terms of yielding the results that I desire would be looking like meal planning, prioritizing exercise, prioritizing your needs, drinking enough water, checking in on the feelings and the emotions that you may be sitting in, managing stress, getting adequate sleep, and this list can go on and on depending on what your goal looks like. When I talk about practicing quote unquote bad behavior and how you probably aren't going to get the results that you want, this is just behavior that is going to take you away from the goal and will not yield the consequences that you want. Typically, the consequences would be little growth or a negative consequence. You could have maybe even over time having harmful effects to either your feelings, emotions, not feeling like you can count on yourself. So it may just have a detrimental effect on your physical health or your mental and emotional health. And in the long term, you're going to see repercussions or consequences of that behavior. So it might not look like there's a benefit. It might, in fact, look like you're not getting what you want or not really working towards what you desire. And this could look like maybe what you're practicing and what you spend the most time doing every night is watching TV or mindlessly scrolling social media or running away from your feelings or not confronting your feelings or overeating or feeling anxious, which I feel anxious all the time, so I wouldn't say that that's a negative behavior. But just this idea of feeling like you're not really making progress and you feel a little bit stuck. We know that consistency is really key in terms of habit formation. And when we practice a behavior consistently, good or bad, we reinforce the neural pathways in our brain associated with that habit. So if you're doing a habit that you deem as something that's taking you towards your goal and you put that as part of your daily practice and you do that consistently, your brain is going to have that positive reinforcement in the pathway of your brain, making that behavior become a little bit more ingrained each time you do it, and it will become much more automatic and part of your day. But the same applies for the negative or the practices that you do that are going to take you away from the goal that you're trying to achieve. You are also going to reinforce that pathway and make that a habit and make that more ingrained and automatic in your brain too. So practicing the behavior of who you wish to become is a way that you can really get to be where you want to be. Whatever you practice, good or bad, you're going to get the result of that. And so let's talk about some of the things that you are doing that are leading you to your goal. I do believe in this idea that whatever you practice, you become. I believe that however you spend your time, that's what you're going to see in terms of results. And when I look back at my own behaviors, because we're all human and this podcast is meant for all of us to normalize without judgment. I'm not saying that it's good or bad to do these things. I'm just trying to talk about these things so that we can be honest with ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to what we engage in every single day. The behaviors. And you're going to have days where you're going to be more engaged in that practice and maybe other days where you're not. I had about 2 months in March and April where I was just struggling to survive, and I did the bare minimum of what I wanted to achieve, but certainly getting to the bigger goals, I didn't work so much on that. And I think that's part of life. I think we all go through these periods, so it's not to judge it in any way. It's just to talk about it. And so when we talk about practicing good habits, what that means is that you're consistently practicing doing something every day that is yielding some kind of benefit across your life. You could have improved well-being. You could be exercising consistently, eating consistently, being really mindful of your feelings and emotion. And what that will do is it will yield a personal growth. It's either going to allow you to maintain your current level of growth, or it's going to help you kind of get above that and to empower you to reach a potential that is newer for you, or maybe even higher for you than you've achieved before. You could cultivate new skills, achieve goals that perhaps you hadn't been able to achieve before. Maybe by doing these, you have enhanced productivity. So you're able to goal set, meet some of your goals, boost your efficiency, and just overall, you feel like you're just like killing it and doing great. And you're also going to have and feel fulfillment in what you're doing, and possibly in your relationships as well. And so there may be things that you do, that you practice daily, you have practices that you do daily that are yielding you benefits. But maybe you want to take it a step further. Maybe you're looking at what you're doing and you're like, okay, I'm doing these things, but I really want to work on adding something else into that. Or maybe you're somebody who hasn't really started that and you're having a hard time figuring out what it is you want to practice on a daily basis and what your day will look like. So let's talk about. So I don't want to negate that. I think this episode is for anybody. It's whether you're there or whether you're building upon it or you're just starting out. Either or, they're both important because they're both going to raise you up to a level that will hopefully empower you to practice more and more of the skills that you're trying to gain. Now, when we talk about practicing bad habits, this is something that you're engaging in pretty consistently. It's part of your daily practice that is going to either have a negative impact long-term, short-term, or just isn't going to get you to where you want to be. This may lead to a decline in overall well-being because maybe you feel like you're not doing things to move your body. So maybe you're eating in a way that doesn't feel that great. So you physically don't feel that great. And over time, maybe that's going to increase your risk of diseases, just increase your feeling that you are not being aligned with who you are. It may lead to stagnation or regression and allowing you to feel these ways that maybe create like a feeling of avoidance or procrastination or self-doubt. And you don't feel like you are growing. You feel like you're just in this state of mediocrity and just in a state of you're just kind of hanging out, and you know that maybe you could do better, but maybe you're not even ready to put these daily practices in place to make something different. But some of the consequences besides diseases are that there's other things that are going to happen that if you continue to practice these habits and these things over time, there will be some kind of reinforcement in that behavior. And so I want you to kind of start thinking about it in this way. A lot of times when we do things that we spend a lot of time and energy on that are taking us away from what we want, whether it's watching too much TV or scrolling social media, most of us don't feel that great about that. I know when I am on social media too much, my anxiety level goes up a lot. I don't feel that great because I feel like I'm procrastinating. I'm comparing myself to other people, what they look like, what their life looks like, and how that looks different from mine. And so there is a short-term consequence to doing that behavior. And maybe even over time, there would be a longer-term consequence to that too. That if I kept doing that and procrastinating and not doing the things that I needed, that I would never quite achieve the goal that I want. And maybe you're doing something like that too. And the more we practice that behavior and that habit, the more ingrained that behavior and that practice is going to be in our daily routine. because each repetition reinforces the neural pathway associated with the habit, making it increasingly more autonomic, more ingrained, and more difficult to resist. Remember, we have that habit loop that happens in our brain that the more you do it, the more it's going to fuel all of those feelings of guilt, shame, self-criticism, and then the behavior just keeps going and going. I think a lot about that in terms of when you eat or you overeat or you are like in this place that you can't stop eating sometimes, where it happens and it's so automatic and we don't even think about it, where you're in your brain thinking like, I want that brownie. And I'm saying brownie because I have brownies on my kitchen table right now. But I want that brownie. But once you look at it or once you put it in your mouth, maybe it's really hard to stop it because it feels good. And then it gives you that feeling of immediate gratification. And then it just continues that cycle of then you feel good, but then maybe you feel feelings of shame. Why did I eat that? And then maybe you even feel guilt or you're criticizing yourself. And then that habit goes in a circle and continues. And so that's what I'm thinking about when we're thinking about negative habits or things that are taking us further away from your goals. And there is a cost to doing those things or engaging in those things for long periods of time. And so do I think that every day we're going to be doing things that are perfect? No. Do I think that as humans, we're never going to engage in bad habits that take us away from our goals? No. I think that you set up your day to include some of those things, but also some things that are going to get you to where you want to be. Because there is this idea of like, I feel like everything is supposed to be perfect and we only do things that are good for us. But I think the reality of that is not what life looks like for anybody because we're human. And so you may have days where you do more positive things and days where you do more negative things. But ultimately, it's trying to find the balance in that. And that's where the empowerment comes from. It's basically trying to figure out, and you decide what choices you're making and owning that and being okay with that and not feeling like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. It is what it is, right? And you can do something different. So when we talk about the cost of bad habits, I want you to know that I don't think I'm not a therapist, so you would really have to talk to a mental health therapist. But in my brain, I'm thinking of that you're having a balance of both, but hopefully you're having more of a surplus of the things that are going to get you to where you want to be, but not the idea that you have no things that are potentially going to take you away from your goal if you engage in them for long periods of time per day, if that's mainly what you practice. And so we know what the cost is. And so we know, we all have been there where we know the cost of engaging in habits that take us further away from our goals. We probably don't feel that great. We may have a diminished sense of health or vitality. If you are constantly sedentary, like I was for years with my hip injury, I know that feeling of feeling weak and like I didn't have a lot of energy and I was losing muscle. Maybe you're someone who's there. Maybe you just don't feel like you have a lot of energy. Maybe you're worried that you're increasing your risk of disease. Maybe you're drinking or smoking more than you would normally do. So there is an immediate something that is going to happen. And I think also remembering that it could also engage, or you could then engage in things that are going to be unproductive, such as all those emotional things that are going to be going on in your brain from not getting what you want or not doing what you want and not reaching your potential and feeling like things are negative or that you can't get out of it or that you can't do enough. Maybe you feel like you're doing destructive habits, that you are feeling lonely, or you're just engaging in things that are not helping you get to where you want to be. And so we all have periods like that, right? So how do you break free from that? Well, I think that one of the things that's most important is to kind of figure out and be a little bit more aware of what you engage in, what practices you engage in daily, and try to figure out what it is you're willing to do and what it is you're not willing to do. And that part of it right there is going to put that ownership on you. And then you can say, okay, I'm not really willing to do this one thing right now, but at least you can set it aside. Just set it aside and then focus on something else. But that you're not carrying the whole, I should. Because if you're not in a place that you can do it, then just put it aside and engage in something that can get you to where you want to be. Even if it's something really small, you just need something to engage you in the direction where you're trying to get, that you can start to have that confidence that you can, in fact, do the things that you're trying to do. So I think one of the things is really figuring that out, looking at what your day looks like and creating some kind of awareness about what it is and what practices you do daily, and looking at what your goals are and see if those two things align. And so if you're somebody who is like, I want to go for a walk every day, but then if you go back and look at your behaviors and you are working really late and then you're coming home and you're watching TV and scrolling social media, and then you weren't able to get your exercise in because you didn't have enough time, it's just going back and looking at that to see if that is true for you. And could you have maybe done anything different in that day to make that and reinforced the behavior that you were trying to do versus the one that you don't want to continue? Identifying any triggers that are getting in the way or patterns. Really digging into, is there an emotion that you feel that leads to a particular behavior? So for instance, for me, I grew up as a people pleaser, and maybe you're someone like that too. And I don't like when people are mad at me, and I'm working on it. But if I feel that in the pit of my stomach that I'm disappointing somebody, then it's very hard for me, or it used to be, to get out of that. And so it feels, all these feelings come out of it. And so it's trying to figure out, what am I doing with that feeling? Am I going to internalize it and eat it away? Or can I do something else that's going to be more positive that can help me really manage that behavior? Is it going for a walk to try to sort through the feeling? Is it writing something down? Is it really playing devil's advocate in my mind and like kind of talking myself through that emotion? So it's important, again, also to know what it is that could trigger you, because all of this is about learning about yourself. I'd heard somebody talk about something that they kept doing more and more education, but they weren't really studying themselves. And maybe that is you. I know at times that was a very profound statement for me. And so this whole journey is about you getting to know yourself, not running away from it, not running away from the feelings or judging it. It's starting to learn about what makes you feel good, what emotions are really hard for you. It's this journey of having some kind of awareness and getting to learn about you, because no matter what we talk about on here, I don't know you. I only know me. And so I know what works for me. And when we talk on here, it's about learning what works for you, because with anything, it's not a one size fits all. When we talk about health and wellness or self-care, it's going to be different for everybody. And so starting to learn about you and studying you is going to be key in all of this. And then also setting some clear intentions, really setting and understanding what behaviors are you trying to cultivate and what can you do to consistently practice behaviors that get you there. And so it doesn't matter how small it may feel. I mean, it could be something as little as like waking up in the morning and looking at like, okay, what do you want to achieve? Well, this isn't little. I think this is actually hard, but like looking at what you want to achieve today and what is the one thing you're going to do to get you there. Or it could be something like your goal is to increase hydration so that you drink like a couple ounces of water more. Or maybe you are trying to eat out less, so you eat breakfast before you leave. It doesn't have to be anything big. It's just this idea that you're doing something that is leading you towards the result. And that something doesn't have to be big, so big that it discourages you from taking action. If anything, you want to probably make it so small that it seems easy, that you can keep doing it. And then you build on something else. And that's something else. As you do it and do it, it feels easy. And then over time, you are closer and closer because what you're practicing every day is in line with the goal that you're trying to achieve. Whereas maybe right now, what you want and what you're practicing are completely different. And so you're never going to get to where you want to be because you're not practicing the things to get you there. So in conclusion, the journey into health, wellness, and self-care, the behaviors that you engage in and that you practice every day play a pivotal role in whether you are getting closer to what you're trying to achieve or further away, or whether you're just kind of staying in the middle. Whether there's something that is positive or something that is taking you away from what you want. Each day is a choice that you get to decide what you're going to engage in. And I think that's something that can be really freeing, that you can possess the agency to shape your habits and to choose which habits you want to engage in and which ones you don't want to engage in. And by cultivating that sense of self-awareness, getting to know who you are and studying you, setting intentions on what you're going to do and practicing those or engaging in those things more days than not engaging in them, will start to align with the goals and the things that are really important to you and what you're trying to achieve when it comes to your health, wellness, and self-care goals. And so today I want you to start thinking about what habits do you practice to support your physical health or your mental health. And that could be what it looks like. And it could be something small, like what are you working on? I know that probably most people are doing something, but maybe you're doing something so small that you don't even know that you're doing it. Or maybe you're doing something that is enough for you right now. Or you're ready to step it up, and what does that look like for you too? What would you need to practice more of to get you where you want to be? And then also I want you to start thinking about how you're going to plan for today or tomorrow or next week to ensure that those goals that you have are aligning with what you practice daily. So thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate I just appreciate all of you for listening. And don't forget to grab my freebie in the show notes about 5 habits you should be doing today if you're over 40. And I will see you guys back here next week. Thanks so much.